Hello and welcome to Target UPSC Prelims 2025 Current Affairs Revision Series, and this is the first episode of Science and Technology. So let's begin. So the first news that we will be discussing is India joins UN panel on big data. Big data, United Nations panel. So India is now joining the United States panel on big data. So the most important thing is, what do you understand by the term big data, which so much remains in news nowadays? Big data. First of all, everything is being talked about data. Big data, it means that the data is so huge, magnanimous and large that it cannot be dealt with the traditional techniques or the traditional computers. So it needs advanced and very high level of computations so that the big data can be dealt with. And this big data is basically, you can say in the terms of spreadsheets and other advanced technology things. So let us first of all see this. So India has become a member of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Big Data and Data Science for Official Statistics. So this shows that India's increasing dominance with regard to the big data, and India being such a large country and also one of the fastest growing economies, and the population is so large. So imagine the increasing quantity of data in the country. After its recent induction into the United Nations Statistical Council, and the induction into the United Nations Statistical Council signals its growing influence in the global statistical framework. And a committee or anything which is related to the United Nations, it means it has a legal backing and it has a credibility of its own. Then United Nations Committee of Experts on Big Data and Data Science for Official Statistics. So what does it talk about? It talks about that it is a specialized body under the United Nations, and it has been established to leverage big data and data science for strengthening global statistical systems, because the data is so huge in quantity nowadays that it needs specialized people to look into it. And because in the coming times the quantity of data will keep on increasing, so it is high time that the United Nations must also looks into the perspective that what can be done, and the research and development should also be that more and more advanced technology must come in so that the big data can be handled at ease and in a very efficient and productive manner. Then it was established in the year 2014 under the aegis of the United Nations Statistical Committee. Then it has 31 member states, including India, and 16 international organizations. So you must know, first of all, that the United Nations Committee of Experts on Big Data and Data Science for Official Statistics, it is a United Nations committee. Second, India is a member of it. Then what is the big data? So it is a large, complex data sets that traditional data management systems cannot efficiently store, process or analyze. So it needs advanced computers to set it and to deal with it in an efficient and organized manner. It enables improved processes, better decision making and enhanced product service development, because it talks about the complete data of a large company or a large organization. Like for example, take into account like Facebook or Google, they are such huge companies and the data they will be carrying with it will also be very huge. And without this data, these big companies or big organization will not be able to function, because it is the data on the basis of which facts come into relevance, and these facts are something which actually tells us that how the things has performed and what decisions can be taken into future to make things better. Then India's big data initiatives. So few of India's initiatives are National Data and Analytics Platform, Big Data Management Policy and the National Data Warehouse on Official Statistics. So these are India's initiatives with regards to dealing with big data. So basically talking about every aspect of the data. Then the next topic that we will be discussing is the role of nuclear technology in global food safety. So the role of nuclear technology, global food safety, it means that with regard to the safety of the food, now nuclear technology would also be used. Now, what do you understand by nuclear technology? So first of all, you must understand that the basic building blocks of life are atoms, and atoms consist of neutrons and protons, and the energy which comes from the fusion and the fission of these atoms, these are known as the nuclear energy. And nuclear energy with its advanced use comes into the perspective of nuclear technology. Now, recently an international symposium of safe food for a better life was jointly organized by the FAO, that is the Food and Agricultural Organization, and the IAEA, that is International Atomic Energy Agency. And India is a member of both FAO and IAEA, and of FAO India is one of the founding members, and it joined IAEA during the time of 1960s. So they both jointly organized the safe food for a better life. And that is true, that if you want to have a better life, you need to have a safe and a healthy food. Because if the food which you are consuming is not safe and contains hazardous elements in it, then your health slowly and gradually will be at risk. Then it emphasized the importance of nuclear technologies for measuring, managing and controlling food safety. It means that food safety levels must be measured, that how safe the food is to eat. Managing, it means the management of the food must be done in such a way that the safety of the food is taken into consideration, and controlling the food safety aspect. And then about the atoms for food. So atoms for food is a joint initiative of IAEA and FAO to tackle global hunger and enhance food security. So this is basically an initiative by FAO and IAEA to look into the perspective of that the hunger and the food scarcity must be dealt properly, and food must be provided to people, and the problem of hunger must not be there. It was showcased at the 2023 World Food Forum, which took place in Rome. Then this project aims to leverage nuclear processes and cutting edge technologies, tailoring solutions to address the specific needs of different countries. Because different countries, like for example the developed countries, developing countries and the least developed countries, all these three categories of countries must be having different criterias, and also these countries must be having different characteristics and criteria, that what is their requirement and how they can solve this problem of hunger and food scarcity by using the nuclear technology into it, for the better management and also for the better maintenance of the food. Then comes the third topic, and that is the genetically modified mosquitoes to fight against malaria. Now, important points is first of all malaria, and then genetically modified mosquitoes, GM mosquito. So whenever we talk about the term genetically modified, it means artificially some changes has been done in the genes. In this case it is mosquito, in other cases it can be any other organism also. So artificially changes are being made in any organism so as to perform the task which is required. Then coming on to the topic, so Djibouti is a country which is present in East Africa, and when we talk about malaria, so it is the Southeast Asian countries and the African countries basically which bears the maximum burden of malaria, and India also has a very high burden of malaria. So Djibouti, which is an East African country, is taking a bold step in the fight against malaria, because the cases of malaria is very high in the regions of the East Africa also, and they are developing a genetically modified mosquitoes. So genetically modified mosquitoes, it means they are developing a breed of mosquitoes which are genetically modified. It means artificially the changes have been made in the genes of these mosquitoes with regard to the needs that can deal with the malaria or the problem Djibouti as a country is facing with regard to malaria. We will just see that what are the changes that has been made. So the pilot project, which was launched in May 2024, marks a significant moment in the battle against this deadly disease, because in globally if we talk about, then more than 250 million cases are observed, and the death that happens is also, the number goes into lakhs, even though as of now the numbers are in countries like India, the numbers are now coming into the picture and the deaths are also has started to decrease, but that does not mean that the number of cases or the number of reported cases have started to decrease. Then if we talk about the genetically modified mosquitoes, so the mosquitoes that has been prepared, so what these GM mosquitoes does, so the GM mosquito are breed in a lab with 2 genes. So basically 2 genes have been inserted into it, and the main aim of these 2 genes are, first one is a self-limiting gene to prevent female offspring from surviving to adulthood. So the first gene, so see, basically GM mosquito, it has 2 jobs. First is the self-limiting gene, and second is the fluorescent marker gene. So the first is the self-limiting gene. So what does it do is that these GM mosquito, which has been artificially made and certain changes has been done to the genes of these mosquitoes. So what this will do is basically it will go and breed with the female mosquitoes and will stop the growth of female Anopheles mosquitoes, which is the carrier of the malaria, from developing into an adult. It means that the number of female mosquitoes in the region must lower down. And second is the fluorescent marker. It means that the fluorescent marker is that the color of the GM modified mosquito must be fluorescent in color, that the scientist must be able to identify that which is the female Anopheles mosquito and which is the GM mosquito, so that they will be able to identify that these are the GM mosquitoes and the scientists will be able to recognize the difference. So the basic aim is that stopping the number of carrier mosquitoes of the malaria from increasing in numbers, because if the numbers will be kept in control, then the growth of the mosquito which carries malaria from one person to another person will lower down, and this slowly and gradually will result in the lower cases of malaria. Then the GM mosquitoes are engineered to reduce the population of female Anopheles mosquitoes which are responsible for transmitting malaria. So this is the most important point that you should be able to know, that who is the carrier of malaria. So that is the female Anopheles mosquito. Then by targeting the vector population, the aim is to interrupt the transmission cycle of malaria. Now by targeting the vector population, now vector population must be targeted so that the population of the female Anopheles mosquito must come into control. Now vector population means that the living population of the female Anopheles mosquito, which can serve as the carrier from one person to another person in transferring or transmitting of the disease, must be kept under control. Then about malaria. So malaria is a life-threatening disease and it is caused by Plasmodium parasite, and it is transmitted from one person to another person through the bites of infected female Anopheles mosquito. Infected female Anopheles mosquito means that when the mosquito goes and bites an infected person, then the female Anopheles mosquito gets the Plasmodium parasite, or the female Anopheles mosquito also gets infected, and then when the mosquito goes and bites another person, and that is how the transfer of malaria takes place from one person to another person. Then it is most common in tropical and subtropical regions. Now tropical regions, when we talk about, then it is from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, so the countries which lies under it or the area. And then subtropical regions, you can say, that can get stretched to around 35° north to 35° south. Then the symptoms of malaria includes fever, chills, headache and fatigue. So these are few of the symptoms of malaria. Then India is implementing various initiatives to control vector-borne diseases and particularly malaria, because the number of malaria because the cases of malaria and the number of people getting infected from malaria and also dying from malaria is high in India and also in Southeast Asian countries and also in the African countries. Or you can say basically the middle income countries and the lower income countries are the countries which are basically burning the brunt of the high burden of malaria. Then these efforts include National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program, National Malaria Control Program, and the National Framework for Malaria Elimination, that is 2016 to 2030. So these are few of the initiatives by the government which is done with regard to controlling the malaria in India, and the target for the malaria elimination is the year 2030. Now coming on to the next topic, and that is Pushpak, ISRO's reusable launch vehicle. So ISRO is the space agency of India, which stands for Indian Space Research Organization. And when we talk about reusable launch vehicle, now reusable launch vehicle is a vehicle which can be multiple times used for the space missions, and also a rocket which can go into the space and also can come back to Earth, and then again can be used for some other mission. So Pushpak is the name of the rocket for ISRO's reusable launch vehicle. Now Pushpak, ISRO's reusable launch vehicle. So recently ISRO has successfully completed the third and final launch of Pushpak vehicle, and that is the reusable launch vehicle landing experiment, that is LEX-03. So this was the final experiment for the vehicle. Then this demonstrated the autonomous landing capability of RLV under more challenging release conditions and severe wind condition. So this tells us that whether Pushpak is an efficient vehicle or not to be carried into the space and then come back to the Earth and then again can be used for other projects. Reusable launch vehicles, so what are they? So these are basically the rockets that can be used multiple times for space missions, and these are not like traditional expendable rockets where each stage is discarded after use. So in the traditional rockets, what used to happen was, imagine if the rocket looks like this, then what used to happen is that when the rocket, first of all, its jets off, it starts to go up, and then after it comes or it crosses the Earth's orbit, then the first stage, you can say the solid propellant stage, it moves out and gets discarded. Then when the rocket reaches a certain stage, then imagine the second stage is the liquid propellant, then this stage also gets discarded, and then the third stage, imagine the cryogenic engine stage, then that also gets discarded. So the rocket in the end does not become reusable because the other parts have been discarded. But in this reusable rocket, the parts will not get discarded, and the rocket will go and come back and will be safe and will be efficient enough to be used for other purposes. That is why it is said that they can be used multiple times for space missions, and it is not like traditional expendable rockets. And it is a typical multi-stage rocket. The first stage is jettisoned, that is discarded to lighten the load after its fuel is consumed, while the remaining stages continue to propel the payload into the orbit. And when the vehicle reaches its destination, and then it can come back to Earth again. Then what is the significance of this reusable launch vehicle? So that is, this mission simulated the approach and landing interface as well as the high speed landing condition for a vehicle returning from space. Now India will also have a reusable rocket, and as of now we are seeing that the SpaceX has reusable rockets, NASA has reusable rockets. So these reusable rockets, it was important to see that whether the reusable rockets, they have the required characteristics to be able to land even in severe conditions. Then it validated ISRO's advanced guidance algorithm for longitudinal and later error corrections, which is essential for future orbital re-entry mission. If the present vehicle will not succeed into its aim, then it will be becoming difficult for the future missions of ISRO, and that will include the reusable rockets, because the reusable rockets save a lot of capital for the organization. By testing key technologies like autonomous landing and reusable part, it paves the way for fully reusable launch vehicles. And fully reusable launch vehicle also gives a positive to the any space organization of any country, the chance that if at once it has made a project successful, then the chances of becoming the project again successful becomes very, very high. Then the next topic is Gaganyaan astronauts selected for EXIM-4 mission. So Gaganyaan astronauts, Gaganyaan is basically India's manned mission. Manned mission means that for the first time India will also take astronauts into the orbit or into the space, even though it will be to the low earth orbit, but still that will be the first time that the manned mission will go to space. So Gaganyaan astronauts selected for EXIM-4 mission. Now the ISRO has shortlisted 2 of its 4 trained Gaganyaan astronauts for the EXIM-4 mission to the International Space Station, and this will be in collaboration with NASA. So ISRO plus NASA equals to EXIM-4 mission, and ISRO has selected 2 of its astronauts, and they will go to ISS, that is the International Space Station. Now International Space Station, you can say, is a space station which is present in space, and and many countries in collaboration with each other like the US, Japan, Canada, European Union or European Space Agency, they collaborate with each other and run the International Space Station. And recently, when Sunita Williams and Bob Wilmore came back to Earth, so they were also staying at the International Space Station for many months. So basically the scientists go there, or the astronauts go there, they stay in the International Space Station. So International Space Station is habitable in nature, so they go there and they technically they work for the scientific purposes and to increase that how the life in space or what major studies or major breakthroughs can be done, so that the hidden information with regards to space and the scientific data can come out. Then EXIM-4 mission. So EXIM-4 mission is a private mission to the International Space Station. So it is a private mission and is scheduled to take place in May 2025. Then it will be the 4th private astronaut mission to the ISS, and the aim is to dock with the ISS for a 14-day duration. So basically the scientists or the astronauts will go and stay there for around 14 days. Then the EXIM-4 mission will involve astronauts from India, Poland and Hungary, and is the first such collaboration in the last 40 years. So the astronauts will be from India, Poland and Hungary. So Indian Air Force Group Captain Subhanshu Shukla is the first Indian astronaut to travel to ISS on a private mission in the year 2025, and specifically if I say, then it is May 2025. Then he will board the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft from Kennedy Space Center in Florida as part of the EXIM-4 mission, which is a joint venture between NASA and ISRO, which we just saw. And then Rakesh Sharma, if we talk about the history, then Rakesh Sharma was the first Indian to travel to space in the year 1984. And what was the launch vehicle at that point of time? So it was the Soviet Union Soyuz T-11 mission. So the name of the mission was Soyuz T-11 mission under the Intercosmos program. Program name was Intercosmos, and Soviet Union Soyuz T-11 mission, and first Indian to go into space was Rakesh Sharma. Year was 1984. Now coming on to the next topic, and that is India's genomic data set. So India's genomic data set. Now when we talk about genome, so what do you mean by genome? So genome are basically the genetic material of an organism, and if we talk about the genetic material, then it is stored under the, which is basically the deoxyribonucleic acid. Now coming back to India's genomic data set, so it talks about that India has achieved a historic milestone at the Genome India Data Conclave, which took place in New Delhi with the launch of the Indian Genomic Data Set, that is IGD set. So under the Genome India project and framework like the framework for exchange of data protocols and the Indian Biological Data Center protocol. So the name of the project is Genome India project. Remember the name of the project. Then these initiatives position India as a leader in genomics, providing global research access to genome samples and achieving self-reliance in genomic data. Because India is such a large country, so it needs to have its own genomic data set so that proper information will be available. Now about the Genome India project. Now what is the Genome India project? So it is a flagship initiative which was launched in the year 2020 by the Department of Biotechnology, and the objective was to mapping the genetic diversity of India, because that is such a huge population India has, so the genetic diversity will also be very high. And if we talk about the DNA, then every person has a different DNA from the other person. So it will take a lot of time also in having the mapping of all the people. Then the aim was to sequence and analyze the genomes of India's diverse population groups, providing insights into the country's unique genetic makeup. It will establish a baseline genetic map to study the health, disease predisposition and the population specific traits. Now when the DNA of any person will be studied, then DNA actually reveals every personal information of a person or every private information of a person, which is very personal, and any kind of medical history or any kind of disease, then everything with regard to the person comes up in open. And the project aims to uncover genetic factors which are unique to India's population, like for example rare diseases and mutations. Now what is genome sequencing? So the genome is the complete set of DNA instructions in a cell. In humans it consists of 32 pairs of chromosome. So basically in an individual the number of pairs of chromosome is 23. If we talk about male and female, then male has XY chromosome and a female has XX chromosome. Then the genome holds all information which is necessary for individuals' development and functioning. And if we talk about deciphering the order of the nucleotide bases, then that is ACGT, that is adenine, cytosine, guanine and thymine, and these make up the DNA of a person. So the process helps in understanding the genetic makeup of an individual and what are the insights that the DNA or the genome will reveal, that is with regard to the traits, health risk and the potential diseases a person can suffer from. Then the next topic that we will be studying would be satellite based communication. So the satellite based communication is basically for internet connectivity that has gained traction, although its evolution has shifted away from being user centric. So it is basically about the internet connectivity, and satellite based communication is itself is telling that the communication must be through the satellite or with the use of the satellites. Then communication satellite is a type of the artificial satellite, and this artificial satellite is placed in the Earth's orbit, and this is basically to send and receive communication data between a source and a destination. Now what happens is, look at this picture. So this is a source and this is a destination. So the source first of all will give the signal, and the satellite will then amplify these signals, and then these signals will be transmitted back to the Earth, and the receiver will receive the signal using the equipments on Earth, and this is how the process will go. So from source the signal will go to the satellite, and then from satellite the signal will again reach its destination. Then satellite communications have opened access to voice and data communication services across the globe in places where terrestrial, cellular and broadband connectivity is not available. So this will help the areas where the connectivity, internet connectivity is not very high and not very fast. So this will basically be very helpful for the regions where the connectivity is low, speed is low, internet is not very good. Then based on the orbit, communication satellites fall into one of the four categories, and that is geostationary, medium earth orbit, low earth orbit and highly elliptical orbit. Now if we will look at this map, now look at this map, this is Earth, low earth orbit. When we talk about low earth orbit, so that is from the distance of 200 to around 2000 kilometers. Then we have a low Earth orbit, then we have a medium Earth orbit. Medium Earth orbit is from the distance of 2000 kilometers from to 36,000 kilometers. Then we have a geostationary Earth orbit. When we talk about the geostationary Earth orbit, that is the distance of 36,000 kilometers and above. And then we have a highly elliptical orbit. Now when we talk about highly elliptical orbit, it is oval shaped. So it is oval shaped in nature and very far away from the Earth also, and very close to it also. So this type of orbit the communication satellite can fall into. So the distance goes on till 36,000 kilometers and above. Now what is the current status of SATCOM services in India? So in India, the satellite communication services as of now, how is it? So the India has enough technology, but as of now the satellite or the SATCOM services has not been fully functional in India. SATCOM services are not yet operational in India, and this is basically due to some of the technological problems. And then Jio Platforms recently, following the Airtel, has announced a partnership with SpaceX to offer Starlink's broadband internet services to its customer. So Starlink plus Jio, that will do the work in India. Next topic is the Global India AI Summit. So the Global India AI Summit was held at Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi and was concluded successfully. And this talked about many experts, policymakers and enthusiasts from all over the world came together, and they discussed about the future of artificial intelligence in India and around the world. And another development which took place was the International Monetary Fund has launched the Artificial Intelligence Preparedness Index, and this tracked the artificial intelligence preparedness for 174 economies globally. IMF launched the AIPI, that is the Artificial Intelligence Preparedness Index. You should remember this, who has launched the index and what is India's rank. So this basically will see that which country is prepared enough to deal with the artificial intelligence and how the artificial intelligence is being dealt in that country to solve the problems and how is it used. So the summit demonstrated India's commitment to building a robust and inclusive AI ecosystem through the India AI mission. So India AI mission is basically about dealing with the AI aspects in India. Then the mission's core areas are compute capacity, foundational models, data sets, application development, future skills, startup financing, and the safe artificial intelligence. Then the collaborative AI on global partnership. It brought together global partnership on artificial intelligence members, identify mechanism to overcome the global AI divide, because the artificial intelligence basically is about as of now, the developed countries and the developing countries are also trying to get the use of the AI for the betterment of the society. Now for the betterment of the society, a lot of research and development is needed in this aspect, and for that a lot of capital is required, and for that the developed countries must help the developing countries, because the least developed countries and the marginalized countries or the island countries, as of now, they do not possess the required and the sufficient amount of capital that they can invest in the R&D of the country with regard to the solutions that the artificial intelligence can provide for the betterment of the society or the mankind, and the inclusive approach of artificial intelligence in making the country move forward. So India was the lead chair in 2024. Now artificial intelligence preparedness index, if we talk about, then the rank of India was 72nd. So 72nd, 72 was India's rank, and the dashboard categorizes country into advanced economy, emerging market economy, and the low income country. So these are the three different criterias, and it evaluated countries on the basis of digital infrastructure, human capital, labor policies, innovation, integration, and regulation. So this was about the preparedness index, and these are the topics that we discussed in today's episode of science and technologies, which are important from your exam perspective, and the question can directly be asked in the prelims examination, and in the end the prelims MCQ. And like always, you people need to tell me the answer in the comments below. So the question reads, Which of the following statements is or are correct regarding India's involvement in the United Nations panel on big data? So there are three statements given. First, India's participation in the UN panel on big data primarily focuses on improving global data management and technology standards. Second, the panel aims to harness big data for sustainable development and solving issues like climate change, poverty, and health. Third is the UN panel on big data is especially tasked with regulating the use of artificial intelligence across the globe. So these are the 3 points, and we have discussed these 3 points in the video. So select the correct answer using the code given below, that is 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, and 1, 2 and 3. Because we have discussed this question, I expect you to give me the right answer in the comments below. So give me the answer. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Till we meet next time. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep subscribing to the channel. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.